Hello, this is Joshua again with the Hub Zero development team in the second screencast regarding downloadable tools on iemHUB.org. In this episode, I'm going to tell you how to actually contribute a downloadable tool. It's really quite simple. We've streamlined the process. So let's go on and jump right in. On iemHUB, all user-submitted content is referred to as a resource. So naturally, when we want to contribute a resource, we go to the Resources menu, and then to the Upload Contribute link. Once on this page, we can clearly see that this is where we start because there's a button to the right called Get Started. If we click this, we're on a page where we can see different kinds of contributions we might make to the site. There are many resource types: data sets, documentation, external links, and so on. Of course, we're interested in submitting a tool, specifically a downloadable tool. So we'll go to the Tools category, and before clicking, please note that there is a rather detailed description here about what you're going to be submitting. If you're submitting a different resource type in the future, you might want to read the descriptions to find the one that most matches what you are trying to submit. This will help your resource gain greater visibility as well as organize the content on the site. So let's scroll down a bit to see the content more fully. Here we see a form where we can describe the tool which we are about to submit. The first field is a short alias name for your tool. It can only contain alphanumeric characters and it needs to be brief. I'm going to call my tool Delta as an example. It doesn't really do anything, but let's just give it the name Delta. This name will appear in the URL of the tool. The next field can be thought of as the proper name for the tool. So capitalized, kind of a traditional title. So I'll call this Delta Tool. Typically, we wouldn't include a version in this, but if that's your preference, you can. The next field is actually for the version, and it can be anything. This is completely arbitrary, so let's say that this is really early in development, 0.1 beta. Next, we have an at-a-glance field, which is a brief one-sentence description of what your tool accomplishes. Before I continue to finish this form, it would be nice to take note of the contextual hints to the right that kind of serve as reminders or elaborations on what each text field requires. So scrolling down a little bit, we see just a few more fields that are required before we can click the Register Tool button. The first field is the tool type, and of course this is required, and this is a simple distinction between a standard hub tool, which runs in your browser, or a downloadable tool. Since we're contributing a downloadable tool, we're going to choose that option. This has some interesting side effects. The process for contributing a downloadable tool is slightly less involved once you provide the information, like the system requirements, and once you upload your executable, the tool is published directly. The next three pull-down menus indicate different permissions on your tool, i.e. who can access them, what they can do. Let's take a look at the first one, Tool Access. Looking at these options, we see various restrictions on the tool. These options are a little bit out of sync with downloadable tools because standard tools traditionally can be restricted in the browser as to who can run them. With the downloadable tool, there are only two applicable options here. One, anyone can run the tool, which makes it public, or two, restricted to groups. I'm going to choose restricted to groups. Now, in the case of downloadable tools, I can put in a group name here. I have another group up here in this other tab that I prepared for this tutorial called Downloadable Tools Tutorial Group, rather uncreatively named. But it exists to make a point, and that point is that I can restrict this downloadable tool's access to members of that group only. In order to restrict it to this group and its members only, I need the short name of the group, which is in the URL of the group. It's the last component, in this case DTT. Which is what I named the group. So I'll put DTT in here so that only members of that group will be able to view it. Again, this is only a consideration if you want your downloadable tool to be available only to a specific group. The next permission is source code access. For our standard tools, we provide and require the developers check in their code to a iemHUB provided Subversion repository. In the case of downloadable tools, since you're providing the executable, you may or may not have your own repository. So this isn't as important, especially if you opt not to use our repositories. This is up to you. In any case, these options exist to specify who can access that repository if you do use it. If you don't use it, I would choose Restricted to Development Team. If you do use the repository that we provide, you can choose either open source, making the source code public, or Restricted to Development Team. In this case, I'll choose Restricted. And lastly, we have the Project Area Access setting. Like the Subversion repository, we also set up a track project for your collaboration efforts on your team, or for any milestones that you want to document, or if you want a wiki for your project. That's all there for you if you elect to use it. Similarly to the source code access, you can make it open to public or restricted to the development team. Again, I'm going to choose Restricted to Development Team. And of course, in this text field, this is where you specify who is on the development team for the project. You can leave it as yourself by default, giving you the project creator, the tool creator, sole access to these areas, or you can add additional logins, for example, my other login on the site, to be members of the development team. After you've provided this information, when you click Register Tool, your tool will be created. Finally, we are at the point which is common to all resource submissions, which is what we call the resource page. Everything before this has been tool specific, but whatever kind of resource you're contributing, you will see this very standardized interface to submitting that information. So this should be familiar territory if you've ever submitted a resource, with one exception I'll get to in a moment. Let's scroll down a bit to get a better view. This text field is very important. If you remember at the end of the last screencast, I mentioned that there were system requirements and directions for preparing the computer. All of that information must go here and must be provided by you, or it will not be in the system. We have no way of automatically assessing what system requirements are for downloadable tools or any other special instructions that are required. So it's incumbent upon the developer to provide that information. You should also know that you can use wiki formatting syntax or a special simple code to format the content of this description. I would highly recommend following this link and reading about wiki formatting if you would like for your description to have any bold or italics or anything like that. Scrolling down a bit more, we see a couple of optional details like powered by, credits, citations, sponsored by, references, etc. that you can use to fill out the information more if you elect to. For now, I'm going to go to the top and I'm going to do what we do at the end of all steps and click Save and go next. Next, we specify the contributors for our tool. Usually the contributors are not the same as the development team. For example, maybe you have a non-technical person who you want to give credit to, or even in this case where I invited my other account to be on the development team, I want to actually only list my name once. So I click the trash icon to remove that person, and I'm only listed once. If the person does not have a login on the site, which you would enter here to add them, then as the text suggests here, you should probably add them in the acknowledgements portion of your resource record. This would be done on the page that we just left. You could return to that step by clicking the previous button, but now we're going to go to Save and go next. Scrolling down here, this is where we will attach various files to our tool, the first of which is the tool executable. To select your exe file which you would like to upload, simply click Browse, and then locate the file that you want to attach to the downloadable tool as the downloadable. Here, delta.exe, and clicking Upload, we get a notice that the old executable file will be overwritten. We don't currently support version.exe files for downloadable tools, but we are working on that. And scrolling down a bit more, we see the supporting documents section where you can upload documents that will be available on the tools page, like manuals or instructions or anything that's not listed in the tool description, any supporting documents you'd like actually, and also the screenshots of the downloadable tool in action, which will be provided on the tools page for a quick kind of at-a-glance look to give potential users an idea of what to expect. And here at the bottom I also see the Save and Go Next button, which I will now click. Tags are a really neat feature of iemHUB.org. They allow users to attach keywords to resources to enhance their searchability and also to give a kind of topical idea to the user of what the resource they're viewing is about. So in our case, we might of course, put a tag called delta, and again entering comma after this makes it a tag in the field, and then any other associated keywords like assume ours was about math or modeling or anything else you can think of that is a representative keyword for your tool. We strongly encourage erring on the side of abundance with tags. The more descriptive the tags are, the more users can locate your resource and understand it at a glance. After entering ample tags to describe our downloadable tool, we will click Save and Go Next again, and here we will review basically what the tool page will look like, as well as the description that we entered, any additional information, citations, details. We see our tags down here. And if we go back to the top and click Submit Tool for Publication, it at that point becomes published and available either to users of the group, if it's private to a group, or to the public at large. So here we see the link to where our tool has been published, and if we go look at it and we have permissions, we will see the tool in all of its splendor listed here. Note that since I created this for a group, if I log out and I go to the tool page, the hub tells me I'm not authorized to view the resource, which is true. Well, I hope you understand the contribution process for downloadable tools. That concludes our second screencast. Thanks again for watching.